Okay, so we are live and welcome to the session, to the third session of a series I am running with you guys. And today we will be talking about this idea of moving from invisible to being irreplaceable in the work environment. And I'm just gonna jump straight in with a question that I want you guys to reflect on, which is, there are a lot of people coming towards coaches and asking themselves why certain professionals have an accelerated career path while others just, they just stay stuck. And the answer partially was given in the previous sessions, and what we've talked about was this idea of performance is no longer enough. So, if you get into the trap of becoming invisible in the work environment, then of course that brings a negative impact on the career, let's say, advancement potential. Okay, so why certain people are moving faster is because they understood there's a more complex equation that stands behind a typical career pattern. And obviously, one of the very regular questions I get from people is, what does this executive material actually stands for? And, to make things easy for everyone to understand, I would encourage you to think of three distinct pillars. Okay, so when we assess someone of having, being fit for an executive role, what we're looking for is their clarity and gravitas in communication. The second one is the ability to influence without a formal authority. And then, as well, very important, we're talking about the presence, how you enter the room, how you control the room physically and as well as virtually. And if you've heard me talking in different sessions, these are clear concepts which are linking back to executive presence. Okay? So they matter. And I would say that you have to look at it as an equation. Okay, the typical response I get when I start talking about executive presence is that, people feel compelled to come forward and say that, yeah, but performance is important. And they are right. Performance is important. Performance is a fundamental basis of everything else. You need to deliver strong performance to be even considered for career advancement. However, if there are more people who are very strong performers, then other attributes come into play. And that's why we're looking not only at performance, we're looking at perception that gets added. And perception is how others are looking and are interpreting the impact that your work is delivering. And then positioning is the other very important component, which is how you align yourself as an individual with the future of the business. So is the work that you are delivering actually fitting in the objectives of the company you are in, right? If you are, you're looking to add multiple revenue streams when your company is focused on cost cutting, you might be doing the right thing, but the focus is somewhere else. So how can you connect the two? And that's very important. We call that positioning. It's not fake. It's just explaining how your work fits in the overall strategy of the company. Okay. So just to trigger a bit of reflection again from your side, I want you to think about who exactly is advocating for you when you're not in the room. That's heavily connected to the way you're communicating, to your gravitas, and the perception about yourself as an individual part of that team. So who advocates for you when you're not around? The second question I want you to reflect is, what part of your leadership is visible? But more importantly, which part is actually hidden? So what are you not sharing about the work you are doing? And sometimes you might not be sharing it, not because you don't understand what you're doing, but because, just 1 second, we have someone coming into the call. Okay. So we're doing it. Okay. So there's the new participant. Hi, we already started and we decided to run the session in English. Hope that's okay for you. And the session is also recorded. Lovely. So I was saying that, there are some questions to reflect on. And one of the questions is, if your leadership is fully visible. And again, the pieces that you're keeping hidden are mostly related to the fact that you do not connect the work with how impactful it is for the company, right? So if you do something, it's important that you show it so that you build that overall perception and that, reputation about yourself in the role. And the last question is on how much of your potential is actually perceived. And that's an important one because we typically think that people pay a lot of attention to us. They actually are not. So it's important to consider individually if we are really showcasing everything that we can deliver for the company, to actually bring it to life, not to keep it hidden for us. I know that I'm skilled in driving cost efficiencies. Well, if you're not talking about it, if you're not showing, then it doesn't take you anywhere. So with that, I want to give you something that you can use immediatto. And I'm going to give you these 5, let's say, signals that tell to managers or to other executives that you too are the right material, let's say, to be considered for career advancement. So, as we talk through, just consider if you're doing it or not at this point. And the first one is framing the feedback in the business impact terms. Exactly what I was mentioning before. Is what you are delivering fitting in the framework of the company? Is your work aligned to the objectives of the company? Okay, that's very important. And again, that's a typical mistake that a lot of strong professionals are making because they're not connecting the dots between their work and the company priorities. The second important one is asking enterprise level questions. What do I mean by that? So if you want to be considered for an executive role, it's important that you show you have the understanding beyond your immediate operational role. Okay, so that means if you are in sales, you ask a question that covers marketing, finance. If you are in finance, you understand the commercial implications. If you are in supply chain, you understand how that's connecting with the outside world, and that fits typically with sales. So it's not about only owning your territory. It's about really giving a sense that you understand the broader picture. The third one is managing up. Okay, so managing up means, how are you mapping your manager, the peers of your manager, or even higher up. Why that's important is that, again, typically we let discussions being handled by, the person who sits on a higher rank than us. And that's a mistake, okay? So, don't see yourself in the position of taking notes when you go into one-to-ones, you have to make sure that this becomes a two-way street. Okay, so your manager is giving you something, you influence your manager on specific points. You bring the attention on, your key ideas and so on and so forth. Okay, so just consider it as being a two-way street. It has to go to work like that, so that your manager actually sees your intent to step forward. Obviously, very important is to stay calm when the stakes are high. And I think that's a very important attribute for leaders, especially, in the past years. When things get disrupted by various events, you see the turmoil in the team. So that's, especially in the junior members of the team. So staying calm is extremely important, because a calm leader passes the calmness in the organization. Irrespective of the level you are in, just think of your immediate team, or your peers. How do they see you reacting when things get, a bit chaotic? And the last point is about lifting others to visibility. So that's an important one. And, especially the newly promoted leaders fail to do that, because they feel that they need to prove themselves first. However, you need to remember that it's, to be in an executive role is no longer only about yourself. Okay? So you need to be the one who brings everyone else into the light. So just consider, if you're working on a project with someone else, is everyone getting the right share of attention, let's say the right visibility, right, for that project? And the best leaders out there do this very well. So just apply that to your level. Make sure that there is enough visibility, and it's better to be an endorser for others, while obviously also protecting your own contribution, than not to talk about everyone else and just, being this selfish type of professional who only talks about your work. So there are a few traps that I wanted to leave with you. And I'm giving you let's say, the most common ones. As you see them on the screen, obviously you're like, yeah, of course, like we all understand it, especially when we can read them, we remember suddenly that they exist. But let me bring it back to your attention. So very common trap is, as we've talked, this silent type of performance. Okay, so I'll just do my job and everyone else will notice. We talked about this in other sessions as well. No, they will not. Okay, so I'm running out of ways in which to say that people are mostly selfish. I'm selfish, you're selfish, as much generous as we think we are. So we are more focused on ourselves, and that goes across layers in a company. So chances are, you're likely to be ignored or unseen if you don't talk about your work. The other trap is this over team player mindset, okay, which is, you choose not to talk about your work because you don't want to put others in a bad spot, okay? So it feels a bit like bragging, or that's the story, the mental story that you tell yourself if you're here, okay? If you feel that if you talk about your results, you would be bragging, and it's going to make everyone else feel uncomfortable, which, it's not the case. And a very important trap is about, positioning yourself in the being a technical expert, okay? So again, let's make this very clear distinction between being an expert in certain operations. They can be, again, finance related, sales related, marketing related, project management related, whatever they are. You need to ask yourself, are you an expert type of resource? And if you are you looking also towards the strategic communication piece. Okay, what do we mean by strategic communication? We mean, living exactly on the forefront of your daily operations, with, looking forward into the future, like how could the work that I'm doing today impact the future? Okay, and how do I articulate this in a way that the company understands, the choices that we're making on a daily basis? If you're in a technical expertise but you lack the strategic communication, you also carry the risk of becoming irreplaceable. But everyone is replaceable, but irreplaceable in terms of, if you get too many processes or tasks, embedded in your daily work and nobody else can do them, the company will not afford to lose you from that particular role. Okay. So, I fully encourage you to become very strong in what you're doing. However, keep the layer of having a strategic communication of the work you are doing and the results you are delivering. Okay. Now, how do we become visible intentionally? Because visibility is number one in this glide path. And, I'm just giving you these 3 ideas. First is about showing up in the right rooms, okay? And we do that by really mapping the stakeholders that have anything to do with our career. So don't only look for, your manager and the manager of your manager. There are plenty of people in the organization that have a saying about how your career is developing. Do they know about you? Are you part of some of their conversations? Can you be, invited for some of their projects, and so on and so forth? So be mindful of, the people that are there to influence things for you. The second, action that I encourage is be mindful of the strategic messaging. Okay. So again, it's not only about the work you are delivering, it's about the work you are delivering, which delivers an impact for the company, and it is aligned with the key priorities of the company. If you are missing this part, you stay in the expertise area. So give the right, not meaning, but, try to articulate why your role exists, why you are doing the work that you are doing, and how does that connect with the company's priorities. And if you find that the work is not aligned with the company's priorities, then I fully encourage you to actually step up and have that conversation with your manager, because it will be very difficult for you to have any expectations in terms of how your career will proceed. And the last point I want to make is related to, how repetitive and consistent you are. Because, repetition and consistency, that reinforces the perception about you and your potential. So you cannot have one-offs, okay? So in this meeting, I'll be all strategic about what I'm doing, but then for the next 2 months, nobody hears from you, okay? Nobody hears about what, the results you are delivering. So what we're aiming for is actually a consistent communication, which again follows the same principle. I'm doing that because it connects this way with the company priority, and this is the impact that I'm delivering. Okay? So that's how we move into being intentional, right? That's a question I get a lot of times, like, how can I make sure that I become more visible? Well, you have to be intentional to become visible, okay? You need to step beyond this belief that everyone is looking at you. Nobody's looking at you. Just work with that assumption, and that's gonna allow you to make your moves and for you to lean forward in showing yourself. So actually, in this whole idea, the whole idea behind becoming visible, behind becoming intentional, is that you need to make this choice. Okay, so the decision sits with you. You decide that you want to be more visible. That's not going to come from somewhere else, from someone else. Okay, your manager is likely not to say. So statistically, managers don't tend to go to their employees and say, and now you need to become a lot more visible. Okay? Doesn't go like that. So you have to own that part of your career. You have to choose to become more visible. Okay, and when you choose that, you need to go through this recalibration of your identity, okay, from being expert in what you're doing to being really a strategic communicator about the work you are doing. And that's where definitely, we see people being separated, let's say in their journeys. And I've sat in those rooms where, we were triggering decisions about people career. It was very limiting to see some very strong performers only looking for their own operations, but showing no interest about what was happening outside their department, or, not connecting the dots with the bigger picture of the company. Okay. So being good at what you're doing is no longer enough. And in order to aim, especially for an executive role, you need to train this skill of being a strategic communicator. So just as an example, what does it mean, in terms of the language that you could be using? Okay. So it would be a shift from where you say, that's a project that, is happening over the next 2 months, into I lead an initiative that resulted into a certain impact. So one of them is very fluffy, very generic, very, top line informative. The other one is an articulated communication about the impact that your work is delivering. The same, you've heard me saying this in the executive presence trainings, the I think, we should, we could, maybe, that's a vocabulary that we should drop, because strategic leaders come forward with recommendations. They come forward with assessments. They come forward with the understanding of the problem, and they come forward, potential solutions and recommendations. So they cover the full cycle, right? And that can be applied immediately for any of you. Again, wherever you are in the company or on your career journey, try shifting the way you talk about your work, and that's gonna start being noticed about the right people. And no, you do not need to have to be in an authority role to have an influence. That's also very important. Okay, so yeah, I mean, the higher the role, potentially people are looking up to you, but it doesn't mean that they see you as a true leader. So we learn how to influence, and we should learn to do it as early as possible in our careers. Now, how do we influence? Well, we need to activate these resources like sponsors, okay? And we need to, you need to understand the difference versus the mentor as well. So mentor is someone who can, help you whenever you need guidance, counseling. Okay, maybe they've been around for longer in the company, or maybe they're even outside your company. But this would be people that you trust with a serious advice, for your career, for your work. A career sponsor should sit internally, so in your company. They should know about your career preferences. They should be aware of the work you are delivering and how it connects with the company's priorities. And they would be the people to, say your name in the right rooms when important conversations are happening. Mentor can do that as well. A career sponsor does that a lot better, and they feel personally, engaged into that. Again, if you're not clear how to do that, the easiest way to say it, like in just a few words, just go to those people and ask them, do you want to be my mentor? Do you want to be my career sponsor? The other point that you have to remember is on the shared objectives as influence anchors. What does that mean? So you could be on different levels within the organization, right? But as I was saying, hopefully your work connects with the priorities of the company. And if that's the case, it means that your objectives are someone else's objectives as well, right? If you sit in HR and let's say your KPI is around employees' engagement, that's a KPI that everyone in the organization has. So how can you build a bridge with someone who sits in a different department and just have this shared objective in front of you, and to understand, you start to understand how your common activities could get you there. Okay. So if your work is properly connected to the company's priorities, you should have no issue in identifying other key stakeholders that become very much aware of the work you are doing. Okay. And not last, again, it links to what I just said, these contributions that go into cross-functional visibility, right? So don't stay stuck. I am part of finance department. I'm only gonna be looking for financial things. And I'm in marketing and I only do brand and consumer and whatever else. So, be curious and engage into cross-functional projects, collaborations. You have the shared objectives to grab, and they will be your anchors in all the discussions. What that puts you in is a position of influence, okay? Because by consistency and by repeating this behavior, people will start seeing you as someone who can easily connect cross-functionally, who builds an internal network, okay? And you would become, let's say, an informal go-to person to direct people left and right, okay? So you want to get to that place because that carries a lot of power beyond the role that you are in today. So we talked what it means to be invisible, unfortunately, okay? And the whole intent is to get to a point where you become irreplaceable for the company, but in the sense of, the company wanting to keep you, to nurture your career path in a way that, you get access to opportunities that are gonna be opening sooner or later, okay? So, I encourage you to make your work visible as the first point. Excuse me. So you should aim for being visible, but you should also aim for being strategic, right? So don't be loud for the sake of being loud. And by the way, it's not about being loud, it's about speaking up, and definitely, making sure that you are communicating in a strategic way. Another very important piece is it's your career. So you need to take the lead of your career. So you should signal your own readiness, okay? It's not only about being competent. You should start signaling that you are ready for more. You should start signaling that, you have your eyes on a role that is in front of you. Okay. So bring that into awareness, of your manager, of the other key stakeholders you might have identified that can have a saying about your career. And the last one, which is also extremely important, is make sure you fit in the future picture of the company, not in the past pictures. What do I mean by that? So we see a lot of volatility in the business world. If you are able to understand where the company is going, right, and you start advertising yourself for that new world, okay, you're showing the competencies that fit in the new world, that's more likely to get you on an accelerated path rather than just communicating and overstating past achievements that have nothing to do with the future strategy, right? So if the company is moving into e-commerce, just as an example, you might want to show your competencies, you might want to show your strategic thinking about that particular direction rather than being stuck in, 10 years ago, this is how you be doing things in the traditional retail part. Okay. Again, if you are working now in a clustered type of organization, the fact that you are talking about the time when markets were independent and things were happening differently, I mean, it is a point to say, but what helps more is showing yourself ready for this new reality, coming forward and saying, this is how we can optimize the cluster type of approach that the company wants. So get yourself ready for what's coming in front of you. Do not be stuck in talking about, nice memories. Talk about your work when it's happening. Connect the dots with the company's intents. And that's going to put you in a far better place than not. Okay. And I'm leaving you with this. I encourage you to absorb this thought that this is a work you're doing not to become someone else. Okay. We don't want people to be someone they're not. What we're looking for is people that can bring forward their expertise, their experience, okay, that build the visibility for themselves, that signal that, they are ready for more, okay, and that's crucial for the people that will ultimately decide your career. We still want you to be your authentic self. We still want you to be, the person that have went through all the difficulties of your journey, right? So it's not about becoming someone else. Yet if you want to be successful and, you aspire towards executive roles, be yourself, but also be visible in a strategic way. And if you're watching this video, I'm also encouraging you to set your own goal, okay? Break it down into smaller steps. Set an influence goal, okay, for the next month and try to achieve it, right? So this could look like, connecting with people from outside your team, identifying the key stakeholders of your career and starting to connect with them, okay? So do something that is actually going to increase, your footprint in the organization and in the business, because that's actually your first step into becoming more influential and being on the right radars for when opportunities are opening up, okay? I'm not going to close the call without just sharing the fact that I have just launched a group coaching program. It's called Invisible to Unstoppable. And it's designed in a way that it brings forward the executive skills that a strong professional should master in order to, as I was saying, to get to the short list and to have real chances for a promotion inside or outside the company. So I invite you to discover this page to read more about it. We start June 17, and I'm going to be dropping the link separately. And with this, I thank you for watching. I'm going to close the recording now, and I'm going to stay in the call to see if there are any questions. Thanks for asking, and I'll be looking forward to your comments and questions. Okay, let me stop the recording.